everybody. Welcome back to Almost Agreement. As many times mentioned before, I've been teasing this one for a while just because it's the first interview I've done in a little bit. So, Janet Testerman, she's running for District 18. She's also currently in City Council. We'll go through all that as the show gets going. But we're Almost in Agreement, almostinagreement@gmail.com. Find us on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube. Go to our website, almostinagreement.com, where you can find my election guide 22. Gives you links to KGIS, links to the election commission, so you can check your voter registration. You can check what your polling station is. You can see who's actually you're allowed to vote for, that kind of thing. And then as you go down, it's going to break down all the different races, who's in it, who's where. If I have an interview, it has an interview link, so you can check them out that way. I've got more interviews coming up. We've got another big show this week. The order's kind of flipped up in the scheduling, so be aware of that. But it's not a big deal. You'll just enjoy more content more often, and that's what we're trying to do. So I got an intro to let run out, and then we're going to talk to Janet, and we're going to have a good time. All right, we can pack it up. We're done. I got Janet dancing. We call it a day.
A lot of drumming going on. I collect drumsticks.
Oh, I've played since I was like 12.
Oh, yeah?
Kind of a dork that way, but I have actually. I say I've played since I was like 12, but I probably haven't played in like 12 years either. I've got them stacked up in the corner over there, but I still have the same drum set I've had since I was a little kid and stuff like that.
Nice.
But yeah, I was a percussionist through high school. I met my wife in the band at UT. Blah 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 blah. Okay, so Janet Testerman is running for 18, currently a city council at large. That's the general picture of right now. So let's go backwards. Let's start with, I don't know, the brief history of you. I know you have some affiliation with Young Williams, all that stuff. So break that all down for me. I don't know, the last little bit, like what got you to Knoxville, those kind of things.
So I'm actually a native of Knoxville and born and bred here and left for about 8 years. I went away to college in Texas, went to L.A. briefly. Well, went to L.A. for a couple of years and then Atlanta briefly before I landed back in Knoxville and moved back here to go to law school and got a summer job with a local caterer. And that led to a 13-year career, and 8 of those I owned my own catering company. And then moved back to my roots in communications with the Scripps outfit. I was on the publishing side as executive editor of 2 of their custom publications, and then I moved over to the cable TV side and did...
Oh, so you can tell me all the things I'm doing wrong. Great.
Yeah. Oh, no. Trust me. And did internal communications for them, and I was actually on the board of Young Williams at the time. We were... getting ready to go through a leadership change there. I don't know if I subconsciously saw the writing on the wall with the Discovery acquisition, but moved into my role as CEO of Young Williams Animal Center actually as an interim for 2 years, and I've been there for almost 6.
Cool. And so what got the politics government bug going?
You know, I mean, a lot of people, I grew up around it. I grew up around it, but at the same time, just really had been involved in this community and a lot of our community's worthy causes for a long time, and just love being a public servant, servant leader, and really wanted to get involved at that level and help be a voice and represent the residents of this great city.
Gotcha. And so then the natural question is, what made you to make the decision to potentially leave the city seat that you have for a similar paying job on the other side of the state to run for this 18 seat?
I think, as I say, when opportunities present themselves, I think we have to pay attention, or at least I do. And this opportunity did present itself. I think, too, it's an honor to serve this city, and at the same time, there are a lot of things that, and I've learned in my role on city council, that there is a lot of legislation that does trickle down that impacts us locally.
Oh, I mean, I would argue that this position you're seeking has way more impact on me and my life on a day-to-day here as a District 18 resident than, well, I mean, I'm not in the city, so that doesn't count anyway, but a county commissioner...
Sure.
In a likewise situation, my county commissioner has less influence than your District 18 seat probably will.
Well, and so, to that point, there is a lot that trickles down that impacts us. And so I think to have good stewards in Nashville, good voices of reason there to really look at and really protect and promote, the residents of the city. And so that was really a driver for me in making this decision and excited for this run.
Cool. Okay. So I don't know, like I'm a District 18 resident, as mentioned, and so this one is particularly home for me. And I guess for disclosure's sake, I should put that out there for doing it, that I'm a potential voter of yours. And so still sticking on the conversation about the decision to take this, had you already made plans to primary before Eddie Manis decided he wasn't running, or was that the opportunity that you're referencing? Is that Eddie said he was stepping down and you were like, that's my turn to jump in?
That was the opportunity. I mean, when Eddie made the decision that he was not going to seek re-election, that was certainly an opportunity. I mean, I would have not made a decision to run against an incumbent, a Republican incumbent, in that seat. So to that point, and when he made that decision, then I did see that as an opportunity to seek election for the reasons I just mentioned, and for a lot of, we're at a crossroads. I mean, I say Tennessee is, I think we're the greatest state in the country. We're the most fiscally responsible state in the country, but, people are moving here by the droves, but you don't get here by accident. And in my opinion, you can't get complacent and have to continue to stay on the positive trajectory that I feel like, the state is on for the most part.
I mean, I hear what you're saying, and I get it, but some of the stats don't agree with Tennessee being top of the list. Tennessee is pretty low on a number of pretty significant lists that a state seat would have pretty high impact on. Is there any particular issue that we do rate low at nationally that you would like to take a run at, if given the opportunity in seat 18?
Well, I mean, I think, I'd love to hear what, in your opinion, what some of those issues are. I mean, I think we have, economic growth and workforce development. I say job creation. We got more jobs than people right now, but I think workforce development, I think that's something we need to focus on. Education is obviously very important. Mental health is very important. That's one of the ones
I want to say we're like 48th in the nation, 47th in the nation in per student spending in K through 12.
So, education obviously is an area that we need to focus on. And I think seeing, I'm glad to see parents more. I think the one thing that COVID showed, I'm glad to see parents more at the forefront of education. I believe in access to education for all of our kids, and how, what's the best path forward on that.
So sticking on education, because we have some stuff Governor Lee's already pushed into place. We have this new funding formula that we're shifting into. Have you got a chance to look into that and see what kind of impacts you think it's going to make?
I think, looking at that and, seeing what the governor's put forth, and really looking at our area and what there are, we've got the ESA dollars that are for special needs, that are for Shelby County, that are for Nashville schools. We get lumped into, sometimes buckets that, on issues that are impacting other parts or other areas across the state. So again, I think that's one, not just education, but other things that, we need to ensure that, we're not necessarily, putting a bucket on issues that might not really impact us or that we're already addressing. So.
Right, because we get lumped in as the big five, but then you have rural issues that the state's deciding on that we have to then follow because it's a statewide order kind of deal.
Right.
I get what you're saying. Okay, so I mean that's a very brief touch on education, but again, what are some of the major? Because I mean, I understand the opportunity part of it, but there's still I can't help but assume that there's some. You have that public service in you, but there are some things that you have particulars that you want to get into. That there's Eddie was big on education. That was one of his things. They always talks about, last time I had him on, he talks about how you never have a freshman senator get on or a freshman rep get on the education committee because it's usually a little bit too big and too complicated. It's your first year and blah, 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 blah. And so he's like, I still wanted it. I said I wanted it. Got in. I got to do some work there and stuff like that. Is there any issues or stuff of that nature that, regardless of the freshman rep status, that you would want to dig into?
I mean, I think for me, a few things are, again, I go back to workforce development. I mean, we have got to find ways to be able to retain our talent. As kids are graduating, we have got to find better paths for apprenticeships, for internship programs. I mean, 55 to 60% of kids that participate in internship programs go directly into the workforce, and that's a great statistic. But we've got to continue to be able to provide and prepare our kids to enter the workforce. And it doesn't necessarily entail a 4-year education after high school. For me too, mental health is a huge issue for me. I mean, I was thrilled that the governor and the legislature allocated $4.1 million to our here to the behavioral health center that's being established at the old St. Mary's site. Because to me, mental health is at the core of so many things. It's at the core of homelessness. It's the core of job loss, economic loss, crime, all of these things. And, we really have to pay attention and start to be, we have seen it with our kids. Suicide rates go up. We have seen it with, again, across the gamut. So I think we have to continue to be intentional when it comes to mental health. And, I'm a former small business owner, and I think there are some potential tax reforms that we can look at and pay attention to not, we've got a lot of people that are struggling right now, and especially our small businesses. They're the backbone of our main streets and of our communities, and we really need to be judicious and, make sure that we're being fair and not being overly burdensome on our small businesses.
Okay, because I mean, there was one in last session that I had a very particular interest in. It was House Bill 1957 or 1927. If you happen to check it out, if not, it's about the reclassification of some of the hemp products and stuff like that. And it's one of the ones that I got a little weird on because your website and you personally, you call yourself the conservative in the race kind of deal. And one of I guess let me back up a second. I apologize. I got ahead of myself. One of the issues I have as a voter, and this is a long argument that I've had with a lot of people, and I'm not trying to start an argument with you on it, but I don't really understand what the party moniker means anymore. So when somebody says to me, it's Janet the Republican, you could just say Janet. It means the same thing to me. I don't know what a Republican or a Democrat are anymore. And so, because I guess I come to this because I was thinking about this House bill in general, because one of the things that at least historically was a Republican point is trying to back off all the burdensome, whether it's regulations or taxes or permits or all the different stuff that states have thrown on businesses and localities have thrown on businesses in the past, and that Republicans tend to traditionally push back against those. But I have seen in the last couple of years, since I've been paying attention, plenty of things that our Republican majority state house has been pushing through that is tax burdensome, like all this, the quote red tape kind of thing. And so I guess in all of that, like maybe a better way to ask the question is, what does a conservative Republican mean to you? And maybe that'll help me understand what I'm trying to figure out right now.
I mean, I go back to, I've grown up a Republican, and for me, it's really about, creating opportunity for others to, be independent, be self-sufficient, and to really help. It's economics, it's capitalism, it's being really being a representative and helping people. Again, be independent, be prosperous, thriving communities. And for me, going back to that is how I approach my politics. That's how I approach my professional life. My personal life is really being, really paying attention to, I had a conversation this morning about, my role in city council and about being an at-large, that I really love being an at-large member, because, it's not a cookie-cutter approach. It's looking at everybody. Everybody's coming from a different perspective, and everybody has their own idea of what their goals are and what their dreams and visions are for their lives, their neighborhoods, their children, all of those things. And so, you really have to look at issues and policy holistically. And what is going to benefit and help build the most people up and creating pathways for success, and in order to be prosperous and be independent and be the best possible version of themselves in their lives that they can be. I mean, it's that may be.
I mean, again, it's not unique that the answer to that question doesn't help me understand it, and that's fine. I'm not complaining about it. I'm complaining about it at large. I'm not complaining about it to you. I guess what I'm trying to say, this is an overarching issue that I don't think I'm unique in. I think people lean on what they're used to the R&D meaning, but don't really know what it actually means anymore. And that's one of the things that I have a particular issue with partisanship. I think there's a problem with the way partisanship has grown over the past decade or so. I think anyway, it doesn't matter when it started. It is. I think that's a reality. I don't think I'm being, too hyperbolic in saying that the partisanship that we have grown into over the last couple of decades has gotten worse. And so in order to understand what the problem is, I'm trying to understand what the parties at play are. And I don't understand it anymore. Like, the more I look around in all levels, I just don't get it. The progressives are the ones out trying to get us into war in Ukraine. The left side's trying to get us into war, which it used to be. The left was the one that was always anti-war. It was the right that always wanted to start fights and stuff like that. That's what, it's that kind of stuff. And it's especially when it boils down to local, because the rules change. And the national party versus the state party versus the local party have a whole different set of animals, but somehow they have the same name on them. And it's really confusing to me. It drives me crazy. Anyway, that's not important to what we're talking about here. Okay, so let's put the city council hat on for a second. Well, maybe combo hat, because you're kind of in a unique position, since, at least for the most part, the city council is seen as a much more left-leaning body, and you were part of that body, and that is likely to be a negative effect on your primary race. I guess, what are your thoughts on that? Because that's the kind of the consensus I've heard, maybe is a better way to say my part of it, that city council body being a little bit more left-leaning is going to impact your ability to win this primary.
I mean, I'm one of two conservatives on city council. So, my point is, do we just concede all of city council to left-leaning? I mean, no, I'm there. 90% of what we vote on are nonpartisan issues to begin with. I mean, you're talking about zoning or infrastructure or, those types of things. But, just because I'm a conservative on a left-leaning body doesn't mean that I, subscribe to everything that body thinks. And I think I've had several votes that, represent that. And I think some votes have, also been misrepresented, because, there are a lot of conversations in there. I wish more people really paid attention or really understood what the nuances of certain ordinances or resolutions or those types of things. I mean,
I agree. I think that's what I think the number one issue we have as a society, especially on the local level, is engagement in local politics.
You're right.
I don't think enough people pay attention to what it is, because it drives me crazy. But I think. I don't recall your city race last time, but I know I've heard people in city races talk about schools before. Tell me how much city council has to do with schools.
Zero.
Exactly.
Other than we pay more than anybody else, but we don't have, enough seats at the table.
Right. But I would say that whole part of the discussion, it's not irregular across many different seats and options, is that candidates will talk about things that aren't inside the wheelhouse. And it's one of those things that drives me nuts. Your district, and to me personally, as I've learned more about it, this House of Rep, a state house or Senate seat, probably has more to do with Knox County schools than Knox County school board members do. The way it breaks down, as I understand it, the school board is a very limited body in what it can and can't do, and that limitation is dropped down from the state. and that would be your job
right.
come December when you would get sworn in or whatever. And so I think that is one of the things that I wish I could figure out a better way to do. That's part of what I'm trying to do here. And so far the popularity hasn't been blowing off the charts for what I'm trying to put out. But I do think it's frustrating to me because, again, one of the things I've tried to build is a job description guide. Like, this is what the actual job is. Like, we've got trustees. We've got people running for trustee right now. I don't know what the trustee does. And there's two sides that I know what the trustee's office does, but the actual elected body of trustee versus the office are different things. I talked to Sherry Witt. I did an interview with her because she's technically running against nobody, but she's technically running. So I did an interview with her. I'm talking to her about it. And it's like, well, the head of the office and the job of the office are not the same thing. So what factors am I looking for as the hiring manager in the situation to hire a county clerk?
Right.
Because I don't know what they do. And a lot of people don't know what they do. And that's one of the frustrations for me that I'm trying to work on. Again, another complete aside to what you're here for. So
yeah, but I think, though, going back to that, a lot of people are making assumptions on hearsay or on 140-character Twitter post. And, I think that's unfortunate because issues that are really impacting our city are far more complex than that. And votes are far more complex than that. And so to really understand, or to, make a lot of assumptions, I think is such a disservice to our city.
Well, and to be fair,
residents.
there's not very good coverage of it either. I mean, and that's another kind of, genesis point for me. It's like, I wanted to try to understand this stuff better. And like I tell this story all the time, I'm sorry, listeners, but we got going on the 20 race. Like we started doing the show, not intentionally getting into politics as far as we did during the 2020 race. And so there was the Gina Oster-Eddie Menace primary. And I started trying to research Gina because I got to vote for her. And I got her website, her Facebook page, and one little snippet on like WVLT. And it was like 2 paragraphs. And I was like, how am I supposed to make a decision about this person? I don't know what the job is, which is my fault. But there's no information on this person. I get nothing. There's no interviews out there. And it was a little early in the process. So I was like, screw it. Called up Gina. It's like, hey, come do my show. What's your show? I don't know. Just made it up. And then here we are 2 years later. And I'm doing it again with the same race the next time. And then I got the extra bonus off of that challenge because that was very interesting in the inner workings of the gear system with her challenge of Eddie for the seat. That was something fun to follow. I don't envy either one of them sitting through that process. It was probably very awful. But anyway, so okay, I jumped around. This is what I do. I apologize.
My city council hat.
Yeah, city council hat. Well, I was going to talk like that. We were talking about whether the more left leaning body of the council is, if you're concerned that's going to impact your.
I mean, I get lumped in, and I think that's unfair. I mean, it's as far as I am there to represent the residents across this city, right. And again, I go back to, if you really look at all the votes, I mean, it's the majority are not partisan, and the majority of them were all in consensus, regardless of what party you are. But yeah, there are obviously things that come up where I've been out on a limb by myself, and based on my belief and convictions, and then there are others that you have to look at strategically.
Right. So okay.
As a representative.
All right. So let me see if I could ask the question in a little bit different way and see if we can get to it. Is there is there a vote that you can think of that you voted for, even though it was kind of against the philosophical conservative that you are, because you felt like it was the correct move for your constituency?
Well, I'll go straight. I mean, one's an elephant in the room. I mean, it's out there that I voted for $100 million in reparations. I didn't vote for $100 million in reparations.
Well, I agree. That's one that is poorly characterized in conversation.
It is. I mean, I didn't vote for $100 million in reparations. I don't support reparations. What it was, I voted for a group of people to come together to look at a community in crisis. It was a task force. Right,
and then they go out and seek grants for the $100 million or whatever. Like, I mean, because it's not a tax. Yeah,
there's not one penny of right. dollar allocated to that. So if I can vote for a group of people to go look at a community that has been in crisis, has been riddled with gun violence and poverty, then so be it. I mean, again, it's when you have that, it doesn't help your city economically. It doesn't help your city recruiting new business here. So, but I certainly didn't vote for reparations.
Okay, but again, I honestly wasn't meaning to allude to that, but I actually, it slipped my mind since we got started. But that is something that has been talked about, and I appreciate your clarification on that, because I think it's an interesting spot that we put politicians in with the partisanship problem we have. It's like you're not allowed to make the right decision if it's not with the party, at least perceptually, because it then becomes an issue for your next campaign run. And I think that to me is troublesome. Like, that concerns me. Like, I appreciate the idea that you can vote for a thing against your party platform, for lack of a better word, because you believe it's the right thing for the situation.
But again, you've got to understand the situation as well,
right.
And for people to take the time. So there are also a lot of land use issues that are misconstrued, that I might be against something, but I have to vote according to the law and the ordinances that are in place when it comes to zoning. So it's land use versus who. So that often gets misconstrued. But I'm also the only one that voted against curfews for businesses, because, again, back to small business and restaurants specifically, they're our largest employer. And right. I vehemently, felt strongly against that. I was the lone soldier on that. But I definitely am going to vote for my convictions, and was the only one that voted against a 50-cent tax increase. So.
But okay, yeah, you voted. You didn't approve the budget, and because that was something I learned this year watching the budget hearings and stuff like that, is that it was two separate votes. You have a vote for the budget, then you have a separate vote for the approving the tax increase,
and you had a separate vote for the compensation. So I did I did vote in favor of the compensation, because I do believe in taking care of our frontline workers and our first responders. We just disagree on how to fund it. So I did vote against the budget, and I voted against the tax increase. So, again, I mean, it's you just disagree on how to fund it.
Right. So, I understand. Okay, yeah. So again, I'm trying to figure, I'm so buried in this right now that I'm trying to remember things to look ahead to, as far as, the school funding thing has been the biggest one that I've been following out of the state level stuff. And I'm trying to think of stuff that I remember that's coming up in the next session, or should be coming up in the next session, to check your feelings on it. I'm blanking out on them again. And so I'll try to put it in your lap and ask again, is there anything in particular that you see coming down the pipeline that you think is important, that you can put a stamp on in one way or the other?
You get back to education for a second. I'll say that, I do support parents being more at the forefront of their children's education, and involved in their future. I do think that kids need to have access, to options. I'm fine with school options. Again, it kind of goes back to funding. I also don't know that, and there's a lot to learn. Education is such a complex issue, but, do I want funding to be at the expense of already struggling school systems? Our public school systems are charged with educating our kids. So, you don't want to starve a school system into greatness or out of existence, so I think and again, it's not a cookie cutter approach, going back to, how some legislation comes down when we might be just taking care of our house just fine, but it's intended for other situations. So, but those are, I'm huge on, law enforcement. I think we've got to not just fund our law enforcement, but we have got to fully fund them and give them the resources and the support they need to protect our kids, our neighborhoods, our families. And again, back to, conservative, low taxes. That is, because again, I'm big on economic growth, because that is how you expand your tax base. I ran on that as council, run on that here.
So when you say we gotta figure out ways to fund the schools better, and or the public service, our police force and the thing, or our policing and things like that, the way we make that funding up is through growth.
is growth, expanding our tax base, because it's that tax base. So you and I don't have to pay for it, but at the same time, those are the funds that help, provide the social services that we critically need. It is those dollars that help fund the infrastructure that we need. So, how do we recruit new business here? How do we help our small businesses or our entrepreneurs look for expansion opportunities and help them grow and prosper, those homegrown businesses that we have here? So, yeah, I see expanding our tax base is really, a primary funding source of being able to, again, provide the quality of life that we really want to have.
Okay, so I had one and I lost it again. I'm having to say IRS thinks I'm a hobby, so I can't contribute to the tax base yet for this show. So once I start getting multiple paid sponsorships, almost an agreement at gmail.com if anyone's out there, that once I start getting those going in, then I'll start contributing to the tax base. Because again, I do think we are in a particularly interesting position in the state of Tennessee with the, for lack of a better word, migration we've been seeing over the last couple of years. I think the census was exactly 2 months too early to get real numbers on what's going on, and that when the census numbers finally came out, they're way behind the reality of the situation that we're seeing. We see it in the housing market here, locally, national is the same way. But one of the things that I've been thinking about recently, because with everything that's going on in this country right now, is it's hard for me to not predict that we are going to see at least a small, if not fairly significant, recession in the next couple of years. And in a state like Tennessee, where we are a sales tax state, which is one of the things that a lot of people like about Tennessee, me included, how do we protect a budget against a significant economic downturn that is likely to happen probably in the first session of your seat 18?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think it's being judicious with our dollars in order to be able to weather whatever recession is coming that way, and it's not about if, it is about when. And I do go back. I mean, Tennessee is the most fiscally sound state in the country, and so hopefully that will ultimately translate. But I think it's nerve-wracking in the sense that, and I speak to this as an individual, I mean, I have nearly 100 employees. So when I look at, my team at Young Williams and, look at trying to be competitive in wages and trying to look at the labor shortage and things like that, there are things that I just know, can I get to a $15 minimum wage? No. I mean, I have a $6.8 million budget, but still, I mean, it's, can I try and get close and be competitive? But I guess there are concerns for me on the sustainability on what we're dealing with right now when it comes to wages. And, again, businesses are having to weather inflation. I mean, what's going to are they going to be able to withstand that? Or are we going to see, mass layoffs, that kind of thing? I don't know. And, I sit on the, Truist Bank Community Advisory Board, and we've had this conversation, and no one really seems to know the answers about the recession and then the sustainability of what we're having to deal with, and the economics that are really impacting people's lives right now.
Because again, and I'm not an economics pro by any sense, but I do have a business degree from UT and stuff like that, and so I do have some education in the concept, and I can't do the math anymore. I just can't do the math. I look at the cost of housing. I look at grocery store. I look at all the different stuff and all the things that everybody's talking about inflation wise. And then I look at the wages and whereas, because I am a business owner as well outside of this one. And I think I just got a text just a second ago that said we just hired another guy. So that puts us at 12. We don't have a ton of people, but I now have to deal with the state, or not the federal labor board, because I'm over 8 again, which is yay fun.
It's real money, though.
Yeah. But I can't do the math I just can't do the math anymore, trying to figure out who's a good wage that makes sense to me, that is worth the work that I'm getting from the employee. But then at the same time, I'm looking and going like one of my guys who's been my best friend for 20 years, we pay him well, but he can't afford an apartment. He's moved back to his parents' house. He's turning 40 and he's living with his mom. Not because he's a loser. he works. He actually has 2 jobs and can't afford a place to live in this town. And it's like, I can't figure out the math. And I'm not the type to look for government to fix it, but maybe at least look to government to help me understand what's happening so that I can look at solutions, because I don't get it anymore. Like, it used to make sense at some level. You used to be able to, work at above minimum wage, but not way above minimum wage, and be able to afford a decent place to live. It wasn't a mansion by any means, but it wasn't a shanty in the corner, or, I mean, even worse, that the homeless population that we have in this town at this point.
Right. I mean, the housing, I mean, you definitely touched on something that I've been very passionate about, again, on my time in council, I think, too, coming down the pike, and, how do we start to remedy the housing shortage and the inventory. And I've been a big advocate on affordable housing, and I know people don't always understand, but my definition of affordable housing is you have your fair market housing, you have your subsidized housing, and then you have the housing in the middle that is really affordable for our teachers, our young professionals, our first responders, our divorcees.
Okay, and I apologize, and this goes back to the city council hat for a little bit. City of Knoxville average income per individual resident in the city of Knoxville, I want to say it's like $54,000.
That sounds about right.
Somewhere in there. So I mean, like, our teachers and our firefighters and all these people are right in the wheelhouse of average. But the math says these average can't afford a house. That's where, again, this is where the math gets lost. I get lost in the math, because it's like, well, like, I go back and forth with arguing about whether teachers get paid more or not. That's a whole separate little subset of things. But the idea, it's like, well, I agree that teachers are important and they should get paid well or whatever, but they, by community standards, they are. But we're not allowed to talk about that that way, because this is going to probably get me in trouble too. But it's like, these are, again, that's the math that's confusing. It's like I even when we do get to the point where we're actually building enough places that we can start fitting people, I still don't think affordability is coming back.
The city, 53% of residents are renters. So that's a problem, not a problem, but that's a huge statistic. So when you're talking about, a lot of rents are more than a lot of people's mortgage. And, if I was renting a place, it'd be more than what I'm paying to own it. That would be the idea. Here. But I'm trying to make a buck, not a ton. Same here. But, so I don't know, from the affordability standpoint, again, right now, there's far more demand than supply, and when that evens out, but right now, some landlords unfortunately are gonna take advantage of that to, but not all. But again, everything.
Well, I think to be fair about it is that you have a lot of people that buy the systems in place and how we do credit checks and stuff like that can afford functionally. They could do it, but the banks won't give them loans, or they can't get, there's a lot of other stuff going on in that too. That is, I think, is one of the problems with this high percentage of renters that we have in the way, and this has been an ongoing process for the last decade or so too, that especially post 2008 housing crisis, the lending standard went way up, and I think it was over, it went over the needed to spot, where now it's really hard for people that can't afford stuff to get loans, because the banks are really skittish about it, because they got beat up pretty bad 15 years ago now.
Yeah.
And so I get that as far as another layer to the issue, I suppose.
Well, I think it's definitely multi-layered for certain, and to your point, I don't know what all the answers are.
I don't know what the state what can be done at state level on that, and how much of that is the federal housing and federal commerce and all those kind of things that have the real fingers on the pulse and what they can and can't do. And that's, again, one of the problems I have as a constituent, is trying to figure out who the right person to talk to is. And it's like, there's a problem here. How do we do something? What can we do about this problem? And I don't know who to ask or where to turn, because I don't know who actually has control of it. Like, my favorite little joke is just down here. You're familiar with it, Ebenezer and North Shore down there. It's flooded every winter for the past how long?
Right.
Have you followed that whole story?
Yeah, we've actually collectively, between the city and the county, really worked to address it. So I feel like there are there's some resolutions that are solutions that are being discussed, but it's on a lot of people's radar.
Right, but it's crazy, because it's a city easements, state road, but almost all the property off of the easement is county.
It's county, correct.
And so it's like, well, who's control, who's the what, like who fixes the problem? And it's like, I have friends that live in those neighborhoods that got stuck in their neighborhoods for a week or so.
Right.
And it's like, well, who do we yell at? Like, who do we talk to? And who like, cause you know, they could call and talk to you, and it's like, well, they're not city residents, so they're not technically your constituents, but it's a city. It would need to be at least partially a city project to get done and stuff like that. And that's one of those things that I think we as the populace struggle with. And it's probably the core reason why we don't engage as well as we should.
Well, you're right. And I like on something like that, and, you know, I have had conversations with that. But the point is, at least reach out and, you know, like, for instance, if I don't know the answer, then I'm certainly going to try to point you in the right direction.
That's been like an overarching theme for most of the city council and commissioners I've talked to. I think Larson said it best. More of the job is being a switchboard operator than it is knowing the answer.
Exactly.
You know, and I thought that was a great answer because, again, like that's, for whatever reason, that just becomes the default. Mm-hmm. I had a problem with Rural Metro, and I called Hugh Nystrom when he was my commissioner, and it's like, I don't know why I'm calling you. I don't know who to yell at. I'm really confused. And so, like, you know, he did what he did, and he got me on the phone with somebody at Rural Metro, and we settled whatever. They tried to charge me $1,500 for me having a fire in my backyard. Mm-hmm. I'm in the county. I can do that.
Yeah, but that's the point, and that's what I mean. I'll enjoy doing that. You know, if you reach out to me and it was like, I have an issue with whomever, you know, I want to be able to connect you with the right people. And I feel like I've been, you know, pretty successful with people who've reached out to me in that capacity. And so, you know, that's what a lot of it is. It's just being a conduit,
right?
To get into the right people and getting answers.
Okay, so here's one of the things that's been going on in both local and state conversation that I'm curious your thoughts on, and whether or not we as a state need to turn these House seats into full-time.
Say again.
Whether this needs to be a full-time, like, because by state standard, your House seat 18 or city council for that matter is a part-time elected seat.
Correct.
There's been conversation more specifically on commission, just because that's one of the things on ballot this year. But I've heard it on all levels on whether we should upgrade the state Senate and House seats to being full-time positions.
I mean, you know, a lot of people, or most people I know, you know, are gainfully employed. And so, you know, I feel like I've been able to manage, you know, my responsibilities with both Young Williams and City Council. I mean,
that's good. It gets a little different when you're spending the majority of the week in Nashville.
Right. But you're right. And I understand, but I also know what the expectations are in that role. And I have a great leadership team, and who, you know, and I'm accessible, you know, would be 2.5 hours down the road. And, again, it goes back, you know, in my organization, at least having leaders there that can continue the day-to-day operations. And again, I'm accessible. I'm there to answer questions or if they need anything. So, I mean, I've always multitasked. I mean, I've always had, you know, so for me, you know, I don't see the necessity of that. Plus, I feel like these roles, you know, do you create career politics? I don't know the answer to that, but is there propensity to create career politicians? And right. I just feel like people are bringing different backgrounds, business acumen, and those types of things, which are critically important to these roles.
Right, and I think it's interesting because I think one of the things that I have issue with, again, trying to follow state stuff, is there's so much stuff that happens in a tiny window. And so, like, I'm not sure if I, like part of me says, well, if it's full-time, maybe they'll spread it out a little bit and they won't have to do everything in 4 months and then it all goes into effect in July. We can do it throughout the year and maybe have a little more time to follow these laws as they come and go and get adjusted through it. Because, again, you know, if you want to, for fun, go look up this House Bill 1927. And I tried, it was very impactful to me in my business, so I followed it very shortly. I got on the phone with Eddie Manis and Becky Massey as much as I could to talk to them about why I think they should do what they should do about it as their constituent. But, like the window is so tight when it's like, it's, you know, if it's a long year, they get into May, but for the most part, it's, you know, January to April with, you know, Easter break and other breaks throughout there. And so there's a lot of stuff squeezed into a little bit of time. And so one of the things I get curious about when we have this full-time, part-time conversation is, do we need to have that much stuff going on? Like, is that much stuff required? Like, do we need to pass 1,600 bills a year?
3,000 presented. Yeah. I mean, that's a lot.
And it's like that, because again, like, I don't know the right answer because I can't keep up with it. I can't track them all. I can't, because some of them are like maintenance bills where it's like, we're continuing this program, sign here, go on, move on. And so there's plenty of those, and that makes sense to me. But, I'd be curious if somebody out there is smarter than me that can break down the numbers for me, because I think that's one of the things that I think I get lost on. I know I get lost on. I don't think I get lost on that. I get totally lost on that because even one bill, trying to follow one bill through a session, I was struggling to keep up with, let alone, like, I can't imagine how you as a part-time employee of the state are supposed to be able to be knowledgeable on each of them, make an educated, informed vote on them, and then be able to educate me on it when I ask you about what's that deal.
Right.
And so that I go back and forth. I don't know how I feel about the full-time, part-time thing. I don't want to spend the money on full-time payment, but at the same time,
I was going to say,
but at the same time, to me, it makes sense. The one of the concerns that I've heard it pitched is that, like, by making it part-time and such a low pay rate, it narrows the field of people that can functionally take that job. That there are people that could be good and willing to and would expand the different voices and opinions that just can't afford to, because they can't afford to take care of their family or whatever it is, because they don't have another job that they can hand off to a good, knowledgeable, well-trained staff.
Right.
So anyway, I don't know, that's just an interesting one that I think it's a fun one to talk about. I think it has potential to be a further conversation down the road. We'll see. I'm thinking if I'm missing, is there anything that you wanted specifically to get out that I'm missing on that I didn't ask for you? I'm a conduit for you. I'm just here out of curiosity.
I just want people to get out and vote on August 4th, and I certainly would be honored to have everyone's vote. But I'm excited about this, and really, personally feel like my track record and my experience, I feel like would be well served in this seat, and just excited about the prospect of serving District 18.
All right, I'll see if I can serve you up a little mudslinging real quick. We'll go there, and then I've got my 5-question segment, and we'll call it a day. All right, so when we were talking about opportunity earlier, you saw the opportunity, and this was the time. Eddie said he wasn't going to run again. You decided that you should be the one to fill that seat. Elaine had already announced she was already planning on running before Eddie had made any public statement about his intent to keep his seat. Do you find it problematic that a sitting executive committee person is primarying a incumbent Republican, or was intending to primary an incumbent Republican?
I think it's unfortunate.
I think it's weird.
Yeah.
I don't know. You're the politician here. You got to be the careful answer, and I can ask it however I want to. But I think it's I think there's complaint on Hensley, Debbie Hensley running for mayor because she's on the executive committee of the Knox County Democratic Party, but she's not running against an incumbent. That's the weird part to me, is that Elaine had already made her decision before Eddie Manis said he wasn't, and I think that's odd. I'm trying to get her on. I'm scheduling her. I got Kaplan scheduled next week too, so I'm going to finish the whole 18 because 18 is important to me because I get to vote to that one. Okay, so 5 questions. All my candidates this year have been asking the same 5 questions, and we've already covered a little bit of it, but we're going to try to condense it down. Number 1 is, where is this in your career in politics? We know it's not your first. We know you've been in city council. So what was the first thing you ran for? What is stuff you've done in the past politically? And then what is your intended political future?
Well, I ran for county commission in 2016 against my good friend Hugh Nystrom, and he was out there probably a year before. But I know for me, if I didn't,
you're welcome, because if he didn't win, you would have heard from me about Rural Metro, and it was bad.
Okay, but for that, I was in a point in time. If I didn't throw my hat in, I never would, and it was something that I really wanted to do, and so I feel like it laid a good foundation for my council run, and incidentally this run. And so, listen, I don't plan my life because I know how quickly it can turn. So, a lot of people have me on different trajectories, and really I'm just trying to be present and accounted for, and would be honored to serve in this seat. And it is not a stepping stone to any other aspiration that I don't have.
Okay. So number 2, and this is very important to me again, because I'm District 18. What's your favorite place to eat around here?
Oh. I mean, all of them. I eat Holly's Gourmet's Market a lot. I'm a Randy Burleson fan, so I ate at his restaurants. I just like food, Seth.
You're not helping. The whole point of that question was not to tell the audience anything about anything. It was just to give me a list of places to go check out that I haven't been to or I haven't noticed or something like that.
Long's Drugstore. Casadunga is good. I go everywhere.
All right, you failed
Sorry,
question 2.
I failed.
Number 3, maybe you can give me a real answer on number 3. What's your favorite ice cream?
Mint chocolate chip.
All right, I'm okay with that one. It's green ice cream's weird, but that one's good. All right, so number 4, we get back into real questions, is do you feel like partisanship helps me make a decision as a voter in general, but I mean specifically in your race in 18? So like this one, I guess we're going to assume past primary. So when we get to a general election, do you feel like partisanship is a benefit to me as a voter?
I mean, I feel like, again, I've often said, I sit on theoretically a nonpartisan body. I've been a lifelong Republican. A lot of what we vote on are nonpartisan issues. R also stands for relationships for me, and that's really as an elected how I try and run. So, I think from a constituent standpoint, look at the qualifications of the individual and see who aligns with what you want to see happen, with your interests, what your priorities are for the state. Because, I think looking at a candidate qualifications and how they align are really how you have to base your decision.
Okay. Then number 5 is you are Republican. You said blah, blah, blah. I want you to tell me a Democrat, preferably locally or at least state level, that you like or respect or maybe enjoyed working with in the past, something like that. Tell me about a Democrat you like.
As a person or an elected?
I would prefer as an elected, but if it has to be just as a person, I'll deal.
Or current or former?
I mean, I would like within like the last couple decades. Don't go back to before we were born.
I don't know. This may be. I love my friend Rick Staples.
Okay.
So
anything particular that Rick Staples has done that you thought was important about the position that he was in?
Just for me, he's been a good friend, and I know that he was well liked in Nashville. I mean, I don't know. He just.
I'm not particularly familiar with him, so I don't know. Exactly.
I love his energy.
I'll have to do some research to understand the answer.
He had some issues. He would tell you we were sitting here, but at the same time, I am. Listen, as I say, I don't have all the best ideas. You don't. The next person doesn't.
Oh, I do. I have all the great ideas.
Okay. Well, but I just feel like we have to be open to listen to different perspectives, and regardless of what affiliation and party we are, because that's really how we get things done.
All right, so that's the 5-question segment, and you did remind me, I think in your answer to question 4, of a bit that I do want to throw at you. Is if you are elected for the seat, I would prefer, as your constituent, that we make real strides forward in the state of Tennessee for the legal growth, sale, and use of marijuana and marijuana products. I don't smoke pot. I don't care about the joy of smoking pot, but it's just dumb at this point. Everybody and their brother knows that it's going to come off the federal registry as a Schedule 1, so it's going to be legal federally sooner than later. If we can get if we can go legal in the state before it's federally legal, we will have all the infrastructure, all the jobs here, instead of importing all our products from California or Colorado that goes to the Senate. So we need the farms here, we need distributors here, and we need the retailers here. It's going to happen. We all know it's going to happen.
Duly noted.
That's just one of my things. So after that, I give my pitch to you. Now you give me your little 2-minute stump speech. Plug your website, Facebook page, anything you want to plug there. Any last little bits you want to get out. We'll do an outro and call it a day. Oh,
all right. Janet Testerman, running for Tennessee State House of Representatives, District 18, JanetTesterman.com. And, I am just here to... again, excited about this opportunity. I want to bring, I feel like my experience, a voice of reason, and, my perspectives and what I believe in. I mean, I'm here to represent the constituents of District 18 and want to protect and promote, what you envision for yourselves and to be a good steward for the legislation that really does impact us here at a local level. So I just ask for your vote and support, and would be honored to serve you.
Excellent. All right. Well, I appreciate you. I'm going to do an outro, and we'll check back in post-primary.
All right.
Cool. Thanks.
Thanks.
All right, everybody. Janet Testerman, as mentioned, she's running for District 18. That is my home district, for full disclosure's sake. And so I'm particularly interested in this particular race. I'm going to try to cover the other House districts as well, but probably not as in-depth as 18 because I'm a homer and I can do that. So we're Almost Agreement, almostagreement@gmail.com. Find us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. Go on there and check out my election guide 22. It's going to have a link to this episode as well as a link to Janet's website when you find her listing on that District 18 race there. It's also got KJIS and Knox County Election Commission. You can check your registration status, where your voting location is, what district you're in, so you know who you're allowed to vote for. And then, like I said, you can scroll down and you can learn more about all the candidates from there. I got the rest of 18 coming up in the next couple of weeks. I've got Constance running for governor on the schedule. We'll have a couple more big shows between then and now. So we're going to keep doing what we do. We appreciate you guys for listening, and we'll be doing another show soon. Thanks.